Hello, today we are starting our series on setting out a house. So we drive down the road, we have to build a house on an empty block of land. Where do we start? Well, the first thing we start with is two documents that we need. Registered plan and a site plan. So what are these two documents? Well, before we start on that, we need to talk about how blocks of lands are divided up in Queensland. Well, if we have a look at this drawing, which I took off Wikipedia, you can see that all of Queensland is divided up into these separate little counties, and that's what they're called. And if you were to zoom in, you would see that each county is divided up into a number of parishes. And over the years, those counties have been changed quite a number of times. This is a map from 1890, which I took off Wikipedia, showing where all the counties are. This one's from 1893, and then again 1901, and that continued over the years. Successive governments would change where these counties were, what size they were, how many there were. The parishes would change, and every now and then they would even divide the parishes up further into divisions and then subdivisions. And what that would give you is what is known as a real property description, or an RPD. So if we have a look at this site plan and we zoom in, down in here we've got a local authority, a parish, and a county name. And that forms part of the RPD, or the real property description. Now that system all changed in 1965 to a new system which is still in effect today. And that is based on the only two bits of information you need now. One is the lot number, and the other is the RP number, or the number of the registered plan. The rest of this information, we don't really need it. It'll still appear on plans nowadays, but you probably only really need that if you're doing some sort of historical search. So what is a registered plan? Well, here's an example of a typical registered plan. There's a bit of information that is standard on these. Of course, the drawing itself has the plan number. Now you'll notice this one has SP with a number instead of RP. That's simply because they ran out of RP numbers, so they had to restart again with the word SP, which is survey plan, but it's exactly the same thing. It's still a registered plan. The other bit of information that's on here is, of course, each block of land is identified with a lot number. And if we go to one of the zoomed in views, it's got the area of the block of land, and also the boundary lengths and the boundary compass directions, which will be dealt with a little bit later in the video when we hit the site plan. So what's the point of a registered plan? Well, a registered plan is about identifying the correct block of land to build on. So when I come down to this description down here, there is only one registered plan that has the number SP209075. And for the sake of example, there is only one lot number 105 on that registered plan number. And therefore, when you turn up to build a brand new house and you're looking for that lot number, you can see exactly where a block of land is that you might be working on. So if I need lot number 113 on SP that number, I know that I'm going to be coming exactly that distance off the corner here, and that's where my block of land should be identified on site with 4 survey pegs. And these plans are available from Department of Natural Resources. In fact, with a bit of Googling, you could probably buy whatever plan you needed online. And if you're interested in the history of land divisions, you're welcome to look at the Queensland Government's website. There's a nice little page on the history there. I'll leave a link to it in the description. So that is a registered plan, or an RP. Let's have a look at the other plan I mentioned, which was site plans. So here's a very simple site plan. I've had this drawn up just for the sake of these videos. This is the house that we're going to be looking at setting out in this series of videos. So let's have a look at some of the basic details that will be on a site plan. Now, of course, this site plan comes with the plans and specifications prepared by the architect or the building designer that drew the house up. So let's look at some of the standard information that will be on a site plan. We'll start with the boundaries. Of course, you need the lengths of these boundaries, and we can see down the bottom here we've got 20 metre boundary down there, we've got a 15 metre boundary, We've also got a bit of a curved boundary around here, which is not actually curved, it's in a series of segments, so we've got the lengths of all of those parts of the boundary as well. The other number you'll notice here, this number is not a length, it's actually a degrees, it's an angle or a direction. And these are marked in to identify the exact compass directions that each of these boundaries follow. And you always go clockwise around the property, so you can see heading directly east is a 90-degree direction, directly south 180, directly west is 270, and heading directly north is 360 degrees. You may occasionally come across a set of plans that calls that 0. It's the same thing. 0 degrees is north, and there's 360 degrees in the whole circle, so 360 is the same. And then, of course, these little angled ones, there's 20 degrees just off north and heading all the way around. And these angles, they are called the bearings of that boundary. So you've got the bearing of the boundary and you've got the length of the boundary. The other bit of information you may have on a plan are these little curved lines here. These are contour lines. You can see we've got an RL with a measurement. This one has an RL of 8 meters. RL stands for reduced level. It just means that the calculation used to work that out has been reduced down to an actual height. So this RL means that patch of ground is 8 meters high. We come up to this RL at 9.5 meters high, so that tells me there's 1.5 meters fall from there to there, coming down the hill away from the road. Now, because these lines are curved, that does not mean that that is not a level line. This line is actually level, it's following the shape of the hill, and that is an idea that I will cover in another video in leveling. Here's another RL we'll worry about. It says FFLRL, that means finished floor level, RL of 10 meters 100. And what that tells me is that this finished floor is going to be just a little bit over 0.5 meter higher than the ground there. That tells you how high the house is. Let's have a look at this set of drawings. This set of plans is quite a large set of plans. It's got a separate site plan from contour plan, so that information is drawn on 2 separate drawings. The one thing this drawing has is a site BM, which stands for benchmark. We could also use the word datum. And that means the surveyor has come by, put a little screw in the concrete curb next to the road. He's given it a height of 14.6 meters. So let's have a look at the finished floor level of this job. This finished floor level is 15 meters 250. So if we go back to the contour plan, we can see that the contour here is at 15 meters 500, so that ground is too high. I'm going to have to dig some of this ground out. Down the bottom here it is closer to the right level, so I probably won't be doing any filling. It'll just be all cut to make the pad nice and level. So the last thing to mention about RLs before we go on to the next thing is reading these measurements off. You'll find on this plan the RL is written in meters with only 2 decimal points on the end. You really need to put a 0 on the end, so you've got meters and millimeters, millimeters with 3 numbers. Otherwise, when you type things into your calculator, they may not work out. If we go to this set of plans, these RLs have all been written in millimeters, and most of your measurements will be in millimeters. If we go to the floor plan here, you will see that all of these measurements are millimeter measurements. We go back to the site plan, they're written in meters, with meters before the decimal point and 3 numbers in the millimeters. But for some reason the RLs are in meters but with only 2 numbers behind the decimal point. So just be careful of that when you're making calculations of plans. Alright, let's go back to this set of plans. This is the drawing we're interested in because this is what we're going to be working off. Last bit of very important information that the carpenter needs to set this house out is the setbacks, and that means the measurement from the boundary line to the house. So we've got a couple of different measurements here. We've got this 4 meters and 80. This is to the wall. BV wall means brick veneer wall. But we've got this measurement of 3792 OMP. That stands for outermost projection. Outermost projection means the furthest structural part of the house, which we're calling the fascia. We ignore the guttering, it's not considered a structural part of the house. So OMP, outermost projection, means the outside of the fascia. That measurement is important because a good deal of the time that measurement is based off your minimum boundary clearances that are set by the local council. And that is all that we need to cover in this video. We've gone over the RLs of the finished floor, the RLs of the datums and the contour lines. We've gone over our boundary lengths and our boundary bearings, and we've gone over our setbacks. The next video will look at physically setting this house out on a block of land.